Hello, my name is Jay Knight, and this is Build Baby Build. As always, please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. Have you ever considered holding public office? As a builder and developer, I never thought that was a possibility. Today, we're going to talk to a gentleman who's successfully navigating both. Joining us today on Build Baby Build is Georgia State Senator Clint Dixon. Clint, hello, how are you?
Doing great, Jay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I promised myself that if I ever met a unicorn, I would I would approach it and talk to it. And I think I'm looking at a unicorn right now. And what I mean by that is in my wildest dreams, I never would have thought somebody that zoned and developed land for a living could ever get elected to state office. So how'd that happen?
I don't know. And I'm kidding. No, yeah, no. There were some speed bumps, with that. I tell you, it goes back, really, I wanted to be a county commissioner, and that was kind of the path, that I thought that I could give back, most to my community because I understood local government, so well. But being in the industry, was had kind of had the same headwinds. Had seen other elections and how they had gone to folks that were more pro property rights. That were in that local elected positions, but really, kind of the path moved forward. Was appointed by a commissioner that had served in the legislature, John Hurd, and he appointed me to the Planning Commission, and I served there for 9 years, and so kind of got firsthand, of dealing with land use, not with just the projects that I had, but kind of sitting on the other side of the table and seeing it from a different perspective. But moving forward, once I did run for Senate, I did hit headwinds in my primary. I had two Republicans, and both of them came at me with some multifamily zonings, not that I'd done personally, but that I voted on and kind of led with. They were in my district, and had to answer those. But really, just it ended up winning that without having go to a runoff. But didn't go negative back. Just hit it with a positive response of it was an appropriate land use for that area, and it ended up not hurting me in the polls. So, but was worried about it at the time.
And to put that in context, though, that was no small feat because you represent a large area of one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. So there was a real sensitivity there to development and home building, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. Gwinnett, being the first, now I currently represent Gwinnett and Barrow County. The district, runs east to west from the city of Beaufort to Winder. But when I first took office, it only had Gwinnett County in it. It was kind of that northern third of Gwinnett, and it was more of a swing district. And yes, uh, that northern part of Gwinnett was probably being the most heavily developed. Uh, you know, Most of the land that was left, or is left still in Gwinnett. So very sensitive issues, when running for office. But I was always open, about it. If I was approached about it at a town hall or if it was, an individual one-on-one, I was very open. I said, yes, that's what I do for a living. And I kind of break down, and if it led to it, I would break down the process. And I'm like, look, the way we operate, is we'll have a piece of property and we've got an idea, but we'll go meet with the municipality and see if it works. And if it works, or if there's a version that if they want changes, if we can agree, to work in that sandbox, then we apply. No, we're not out there just snatching up land and big bad developers trying to create traffic and issues. We're just responding to a need that actually has been created by the legislature.
Yeah.
Very business friendly environment that we've got in Georgia, and the number one state to do business for over a decade, I believe about 12 years now, and that's created a big part of the demand here in Georgia.
So that gets us to where we are today. But how did you get started? Are you from that area originally?
Yeah, born and raised in Gwinnett. Yes, graduated from Central Gwinnett High School in '98. My wife, yeah, she went to Central Gwinnett, graduated a year after me. So both of us born and raised here. Her family goes back six generations to a farming family, in Gwinnett. So mine goes back, a couple of generations, but her family roots were very deep. Never lived outside of Gwinnett. Grew up in Lawrenceville and the Decula area. Now live in Mulberry, a city that I helped create a few years ago. But it's that northeastern side of Gwinnett, almost in Barrow County. But have three kids. My son Hudson and two daughters, Berkeley and Emsley. Hudson's a senior at Buford. We always call it Buford University, but
No kidding.
yeah, and but he's interested in the industry, which I'm so excited about. And it started for me. I got in the industry. I was in college, actually going to at the time. Now it's Georgia Gwinnett College. At the time, it was Georgia Perimeter, and was taking business classes and got my real estate license. And um, my dad, engineer by trade, had an engineering firm, but his passion on the weekends, if we weren't hunting, we were out looking for dirt. So if he had extra money, he was buying land, and he was more of the not because of the civil engineering, he didn't want to compete with his clients. He was mainly more spec buying a little bit further out, but where he thought growth was going. So I was always, that was kind of the path I took. I guess the black sheep of the family didn't go the engineering route, went the real estate route, but that's kind of where the love of it started, was then as a kid.
That was really the story of the industry for years before, and nothing against the Nationals, but but before the Nationals took over, we all of us learned the trades from our parents or family friends or someone. I know it's funny you mentioned Gwinnett. When you were just a glimmer in your dad's eye, we were framing houses in Gwinnett County, and then we started in Gwinnett in '78 or '79. We were based in the south side of town, and so I was about 14 years old, and I would ride to work with my dad and my uncle, and we framed houses for a builder. I don't know if this means anything to you. Sonny Dubbers up there,
Oh yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Gwinnett.
yeah,
He owned Brayson Homes,
yes.
and then we did a little bit of work for the Bowen family up there, and we framed houses until 1985, and that was how I learned the business, and it was how we financed our business, and we're able to start from there. But we were up there when they were building the Mall of Georgia, and so the Mall of Georgia was I mean, not Mall of Georgia, Gwinnett Place Mall. Yeah, Gwinnett Place, that we were there getting ready to start that when we were there. So Gwinnett's been through a lot of changes, and you saw every one of them in your time there. So you go to college. You lived in Gwinnett. Your wife's from Gwinnett. You've got this neat apprenticeship with your dad, and what better way to learn land than from an engineer? You understand what's good and bad about land, and then you go into the business. Did you go in as a business owner? Or did you ever work for anyone first?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, while I was in college, you got my license, and actually, the Bowens you talk about, uh, Rudy Bowen, and then uh, Mike Phelps, and David Bowen and Tip Cape. That group, I actually it put a piece of land under contract with them. It was a RZT zoning, zero lot line, and was going through the process. But back then, it was 18 months when you filed for zoning before you were heard.
Oh, gee.
Now it's 3 or 4 months. But so I was in school and it done that, and then had another piece of property I had tied up and was working on a few, and that closed, and I actually quit school and just went straight into it. Um, there I think it was 2001, I believe, and just jumped right in the business and hadn't stopped. That's kind of where it started for me. Initially, just brokerage, and then actually on a trip to Mississippi to It was the Golden Moon. It was a casino, and met a builder, Eric Chafin, Chafin Communities, and him and I hit it off and started taking him land, and then he kind of pulled me in as an independent contractor, where wasn't employed but just paid me percentage and of the deal, and so I just started bulldogging land for him up until the recession hit.
Yeah.
But he was uh, a huge influence, still is in my life. Mentor to me, taught me the business, and funny. Folks talk. They're like, "Oh, well, how do you do acquisitions? How do you go find dirt?" And I said, "Well, you got to go talk to property owners." And back then you didn't have cell phones. You had cell phones, but where you looked them up, it had to be the home phone. So I had me a 2-inch binder, and GIS really didn't work. It was just kind of a mapping system, but I would use that, and I'd go to tax records, and I'd print the tax records off and look up the home phone number. And after dinner, I'd make 30 to 50 calls every night, just cold calling property owners. And that's kind of how I built my first,
And how old are you
you
at this
know,
time?
uh, 20, 20, it probably started 22. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty impressive. That's
Yeah.
I bet you look back on that and you're really proud of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And people that get in the industry, they're looking for, oh, well, what's this silver bullet? And I'm like, well, you just got to go, call them, go, take them, apple pies, some fruit, and, go knock on their door and meet them and start a relationship. But it's a marriage. It's not a date when you're dealing with land.
No, you're right about that. So you're getting all this experience and you're working with um, Chafin was a big production home builder. Bowen family's always been big production builders in that area and then all over. So how do you go from that to getting involved with politics? Why did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it really started. I mean, the core of it, I wanted to give back. I was fortunate. Loved my community, born and raised here, and wanted to, hopefully leave at a place where my kids want to raise their family here and continue kind of our legacy. So I thought the best way to give back would be to get involved with local politics, and so that's kind of where it started with me, and dealing with land use and zonings. Um, I had just started getting to know the commissioners as we have to do, and so when elections would come up, ones that I would support, would get out and when I was young, put signs up, knock on doors, things like that, and one of them appointed me to the tree advisory committee. So you got you know developer guy cutting trees down, in here with arborists and all, and that's how I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but we ended up changing the ordinance, Gwinnett, because they had just a couple species that they used for neighborhoods, so we made bigger varieties, and also it worked out well. Um, but that kind of pushed me towards my thought was my best way to serve would be at the county commission level, and but as I went forward, it was actually John Hurd's. He was going to run 2 terms and retire, and he decided to run for a third term, and that's when Gwinnett started to flip, and he lost to a Democrat. Um, and Renee Unterman, the senator that sat in the seat before me, she was a local politician before. She was a Gwinnett County Commissioner and the mayor of Loganville. Before that, and so she would get involved in zonings, and as you know, is on the planning commission side, I would show up, and if it was a contentious one, there might be a room full of 200 people, and she would show up and be managing. And we got to know each other real well, and she decided to run for Congress, and she was the one approached me and was like, "Look, you need to think about running for this seat. We need somebody that understands local government, that understands Gwinnett." And I'm like, "Well, I don't even know anything about the state level. I mean, I understand generally how it works." She goes, "Yeah, but that's what we need." And so that kind of pushed me towards the state level, but had never really saw myself running at the state level. But the Lord, he works, in mysterious ways, and we don't always understand the direction he's taking us. But here I am, and so I'm going
And
to
so
serve the best way I can.
so you're on the tree advisory committee. Is that what it was called? And
That's
then,
correct.
but you went to the planning commission after that, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I went from that from the tree advisory committee, and then I served during the real dark part of the recession. I was on the water and sewer authority for Gwinnett, and so we were trying to finish like big projects. They had some big, massive regional pump station projects, and um, we were having to issue bonds and things like that. But served there, and then moved to the planning commission after that.
So is the planning commission an appointed position?
It is, yeah. It's a appointed commission. It's all with land use, and so as you file, for your rezoning or your special use, you get your staff comments, and then it moves to the planning commission, and it's a board set up, but it's a recommending body to the commissioners. And so the way I always looked at it is we were kind of the shield. So we would meet with the applicant, meet with the opposition, get everybody together, and try to find a good compromise and move things forward. But that was probably that, and being an HOA president. I don't know why I did that, but those were probably the two most difficult jobs that I ever had. Yeah, I had, some of the rezonings, that when I came into the planning commission, it was like 2011. So very slow, but then as everything heated back up, we started having, meetings that would go to 1 or 2 a.m. and folks were angry, and we even had threats of flashing my tires and things like that. Those meetings get eventful, as you know.
Well, you mentioned that God had plans for you that you didn't really lay out. A friend of mine, pastor, says that coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. And coincidentally or not, the fact that you ended up with that experience as a developer, you never quit that, in the tree council as a developer, then with water and sewer, then with planning and zoning board. How uniquely qualified are you when it comes to policy at the county level?
Yeah, that's yeah, got me thinking back now. And yeah, the Lord does work in mysterious ways. How all that lined up, I have no clue. But yeah, that's where you always encourage folks where you hit a wall in life, and always look for that window because
Well,
there's
you
one of
must
those
have done
moments.
something wrong along the way because he made you an HOA president.
Yeah, that was rough.
So you've done all that, started as really just a young, hardworking guy, and obviously a smart guy, ambitious guy, because you're still a young guy, and now you're a state senator. You've been a state senator now for 6 years.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
6 years. So you mentioned that you had a desire to give back to your community. How has this elected position allowed you to give back to your community?
Oh wow, yes. In so many ways, through legislation. I mean, it definitely is helped quite a bit. When I first came in, we were having quite a bit of issues with the school board in Gwinnett County. They ended up firing Alvin Wilbanks, who was a big part of who made Gwinnett County schools what they are, and um, so had to kind of hit headwinds with it. Initially, coming in to office, dealing with that, and ended up changing our school board to nonpartisan, where you got the R and the D off of that. But golly, that was like a culture war issue within itself, at the time in 2021. But it has helped, quite a bit. The last election where we had it was a Republican held seat, but it was less than 1% on the school board. At the nonpartisan, it was a conservative Republican won by 8 points. So it increased quite a bit, taking that DNR off there. But the intent was to get the focus back on the kids and not partisan politics, and that was a difficult thing, but very rewarding. In seeing the change and seeing how our school board operates much better now, where you've got less contentious, Republican Democrat type issues, and back to students, but also being able to help constituents, with issues and connecting them where they're having trouble with, getting a license. Helped a nurse where she was about to not be able to continue to operate because the Secretary of State was having issues, and was able to connect her and continue to be able to work. Being able to help folks like that is probably the most rewarding part of it. More so than the legislation and the battles that you see. Those are rewarding as well. When you're doing good for all Georgians. But um, I tell you, the biggest thing is just the honor to serve. I mean, being down there um, in that capacity, and also being able to serve and give back to our industry as well, because there's many other measures that need to take place to help with affordability, but then also to help in our industry.
It occurs to me while you're talking that the the folks watching this, um, I hope there's a segment that will be encouraged to consider public service. Someone like me, I wrongly just closed the door to the idea because in my 20s, I had been to zoning um, meetings where it's me and my attorney sitting there in favor of a project, and 250 people opposed me, and they didn't like me and called me bad names, Clint. I can't believe they called me bad names. It really hurt my feelings. But I did it again and again and again and again. I couldn't get enough of it. And so I closed the door early to that, just thinking there's no chance I could get elected county commissioner or anything else. But you boldly did that. And I think one secret, or two secrets, I think, that you have, and I don't know if you've distilled them this way, is when you were putting up those signs and you were willing to serve on those boards, it seemed like you said yes a lot. You made yourself available a lot, even when there wasn't going to be a lot of limelight for you. And then when you were in the race for Senate and you got challenged about the apartment complexes that you voted for, apparently, and that type thing, you didn't run from that. You had honest, transparent conversations, and do the voters, I'm wondering if voters, even if they don't agree with someone 100%, if they can find your integrity in talking with you, if that's how you were able to move voters to support Clint Dixon.
Yeah, yes, it is, and and I do, folks that are listening, especially young folks getting in the industry. I encourage you, um, as you get to know your state elected folks, but also get to know those local elected officials. Get involved with them. You heard how my path was. I mean, there's 1,000 ways, to get involved, but if you got, the desire and think that you want to serve just because you're in our industry, don't let that hold you back. I encourage you to continue down that path and reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. I know you said I'm young, but you know, uh, this time that I'll be in office is limited, and somebody else needs to step up, and would love to talk to you and love to mentor you and have a conversation with you. It's important, um, that we have our next generation. We're building that bench, um, and we're moving away from that. I believe, not even talking about just in our industry, but in school and things. When they're taught civics, it's one chapter in one book, but it's not. Um, Students they don't grasp it. When I go to the classroom and I'm able to speak to them, that what's in the text, that it doesn't jump out to them like it should. But uh,
So, do you
that would be my
think,
biggest message.
would you recommend, if someone is kind of piqued their curiosity, that campaign work might be a good place to start if you're a young person?
Yes, I do. Especially when you're young. Yeah, I mean, because typically you don't have the financial means to, as far as donating checks or trying to hold fundraisers. But candidates, including myself, those volunteers that put up signs, that knocked on doors for me, uh, when they call, I answer, I text them back and let them know I'll call them right back. I mean, they're at the top of my list. And why I say that is because then it is a doorway into politics, because you start to build that relationship with that politician and with others. And there are other boards, there's opportunities to serve. And that's a good way to get your foot in the door and then start getting, your name out there, in that local community.
When I was doing some work at the Capitol during this last session, and we just concluded, for those watching, we just concluded this session of the Georgia General Assembly. Um, Being close to it and having those are conversations I'd never had with state level elected officials before. uh, it it surprised me that it did not look as intimidating. It looked like something that you could do, um, and where I had assumed it was something I could never do, it looked like something that if a young person got close to it, learned some of the inner workings, some of the personalities, some of the um, people who had good advice to give and would give it, that it was something they could do. And I was really impressed with the number of young people at the Capitol that were working in those interim positions and pages and that type thing. And then of course for the folks that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s or whatever, um, then running for office, you've proved that people that suffer from being in the construction industry can win those races. So we know a little bit about you, about how you got started. You have a unique story, but it's not one that other people couldn't emulate. Um, but you also didn't just get that office and sit there. You you are doing things on behalf of all Georgians, and you also are doing things on behalf of the industry that you know so well, the development and home building industry. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you just accomplished in um, this session and what the implications of Senate Bill 447 will be?
Yeah, I tell you, very significant. Senate Bill 447, it will help our industry tremendously dealing with land disturbance permits and final plats. As you and I spoke, the average time to get a plat is 11 months now. And back when I got in the industry in the early 2000s, it was, 2 to 4 months. And this bill will get it back to that. And that's simply put, but that was the goal of the bill. We were able to get the meat and the teeth kept in that legislation, and that's what it's going to do. And it'll hold the municipalities accountable, the ones that are delaying the plats, but it will also help them. I think some of the pushback that we got from them once they're able to implement the dashboard, once they're able to get their criteria online that they require, once they're the comments come out and that they got that 45 days, but the comments that they make, that's all that they can put in it. Some of the pushback we got from that, I think that streamline will help the local municipalities as it will help our industry as well.
I think you're right. So you made a big difference on permit streamlining. Um, that should go into effect in 3 months from now. It's going to really be momentous, I believe. But do you think there are other things that are affecting home affordability? And what, if you had to name a couple things that you think are significant, what do you think we need to look at next?
Gosh, yes. I mean, the issues we've got dealing with zonings at the local level. Being a planning commissioner for 9 years, we were the recommending body, but still got the same the same fire from opposition as the commissioners did. Um, and this would be a huge fight, but taking that away from them, but not in a way of putting it at the state level. I don't think that would be appropriate either. But you know, creating where when they do their unified development plan, that they go into detail of their character areas. But, once they've established that, if your zoning is within that, unless you need a variance or special use or something like that, then it's a use by right. So not taking it away from them, but setting up those standards, and then only if there's certain circumstances where they would have to come to the board. But as a former member, I would have welcomed that. That would help. It would also be more detailed in planning on their behalf, up front. But it would also create that sandbox, where local municipalities and I was a part of it. It was the 2040 plan the Ponding Company did for Gwinnett County when I was a planning commissioner, and they're setting up these character areas and all the details that go into it. But the zoning process will make the politicians, because of politics, move away from that. And if you look at character areas from most any municipality, that sets forth and was actually implemented, it looks, vastly different. So I think it would help the municipalities, especially growing areas where they create those character areas and they get developments and community that they really want. But that's going to be a fight. That one will be a very difficult task. Along with moratoriums, that's another weapon that municipalities use, and sometimes they need it, but it needs to be clearly stated. It needs to be limited. It needs to be a 90, or no more than a 6 month, 180-day process, and it needs to be limited to that time frame. No extensions beyond that. I think that's another piece that needs to be looked at as well.
So the plan that you mentioned, the unified development plan, that's the same thing as the future land use map, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the municipalities create one of those every 5 years. I think that's what the requirement is to maintain a rating with DCA. You were a part of that process on that before?
I was. Yeah.
How extensive is that process? Because the ones I'm familiar with typically involve a lot of community input, um, a consultant who's not cheap, and usually there was the ones I'm familiar with took about a year to create, with the community meetings and all that stuff. What was your experience on what effort Gwinnett County put in to their future land use map?
Yeah, it was a massive effort, and yeah, it was. I believe it was about 15 months before it was completed, and yeah, there were multiple community meetings, and they would even go out. Wasn't all held at the county courthouse. They would actually go to the areas, um, or the districts, where they would zero down to those areas and have communities come in, for that area, so they would get more local with it. And they spent 4 or 5 months doing that. Um, but then the meetings with us, with that professional staff, the adjustments made, yeah, it was about a 15-month process, and very detailed is what they went through.
I'm not gonna. I'm reluctant to ask you, but do you ballpark what that cost? That 15-month effort with consultants and all the things you had to do.
Yeah, it, I couldn't, I can't remember, but it was very expensive.
It wasn't free.
No, no, it was very expensive.
I think what you're raising is a really interesting point. So if I go in and I apply for a zoning that complies with what's on the future land use map, then by right zoning would allow us to go straight to engineering. And that would, one, it takes the fight away. The professionals have determined what they will, and the professionals and the communities have determined what they wanted over a course of 15 months. They update it every 5 years. And so it would make sense that you wouldn't revisit that in a 3-hour meeting. There would be no point. And so if you get that, then it helps. You're a state senator in Georgia where 65% of Georgians can't afford a home, medium price home. The average age of a first-time home buyer is 40. This would get more homes to market faster that the community already said they wanted. And that's a really interesting point. So um, I think what's a real benefit of that, in addition to the speed and hopefully the downward pressure on pricing because of increased supply, is when I go through a zoning, even if I comply with the future land use map, there's usually like a 50-50 chance I'll get the zoning, even if I comply. And it's just because the way the wind's blowing that day when we had the meeting, basically. So, but I also, even if I get the zoning approved, let's say the zoning category, we just call it R3. And R3 is not for Gwinnett County. It's not for any of these other counties. That's a pretty generic term that a lot of them use, R3, R4, or whatever, R1, R2. But let's say I'm getting R3 zoning. That was in the future land use map. In the ordinance, it says 4,000 square foot lots and 1,200 square foot homes. But when I go through the zoning process, I usually leave with something that's more in the tune of 12,000 square foot lots and 2,400 square foot homes. So even though I get a zoning approved, I'm getting one approved that doesn't resemble what was envisioned when the zoning ordinance was written or when the future land use map was created.
That's correct. And I saw it time and time again, even at the planning commission level. They had a district next to me, and commissioner, um, it was a the conservation subdivision. OSC is what Gwinnett called it. Set aside 40%, 60 by 120 lots, uh, but you know that initial zoning designation was written really well and worked well. Um, and he took it upon himself that he would increase it by, he wanted 70-foot lots. And so in the zoning, he broke it up. And I know that's a little thing, but if you do that, for, you know, developments, you've got commercial components, and time again, they just break that cycle. And, that 10 feet, yes, to a buyer out there, wouldn't know the difference between the 60 and the 70-foot lot, but to a developer, to a home builder, the loss of that efficiency, because the streets, your utilities, they're all the same going in. There's another affordability issue that we've got. Not to mention from the municipality standpoint, doing that and other changes that they make during the zoning process, either because of a commissioner that has an idea or because of opposition, moves them away from that ordinance every time. And I've heard it in Gwinnett. It's like, oh, we wanted to be more like, Alpharetta, and we wanted to have more, congruency to our neighborhoods. We wanted more neighborhoods to look like Hamilton Mill. Well, you have to master plan for that. You can't,
Right.
Modge Podge here, and oh, opposition showed up here, so we're going to blow this zoning up and move away from our land use plan. And then one next door, nobody showed up, so we're going on here. So I said, I think, from a consistency standpoint and from, the way municipalities be developed, I think you would have, uh, communities that are much more desirable to live in.
That's a lot to think about, and it's really smart because it sounds like if you did something like that, it would remove the process from being a political process and it would be more of a professional process because you've already gone through the 15 months of creating your future land use map. You spent all the time and effort with professionals drafting the zoning ordinance, and it makes it more predictable. It gets more homes to market. It makes all of us be more thoughtful about participating on the creation of these future land use maps, and if invited, the zoning ordinances. So that's a really good thought there. And when you mentioned going from 60-foot lots to 70-foot lots, I think the cost on that would be, we budget for something like that about $1,000 a foot per lot, and so that would be $10,000 in cost on the lot, on the just the development cost. To the builder, he's going to have to landscape more, deal with more, and when you do that, you reduce the number of lots that can be accommodated. So this is rough math, but if 10 feet is, oh gosh, 16% of the lot width increase, then you could potentially end up with 16% less lots. So a neighborhood that would have yielded 100 lots will now yield 84, which now has upward pressure on pricing because the land didn't yield as many lots. So the lot will be more expensive to the builder, who in turn will have to charge more to the end user, and it puts us back in the position we're in now, where 65% of Georgians can't afford a home, and we're 40 years old before we can buy our first home, and we have plummeting birth rates. There's a lot of ancillary cost to those type of arbitrary uh, conditions. So, but you were able to navigate all that. You were able to maintain your spirit of service to your community. You unapologetically do good work as a developer. and serve serious good builders. You've mentioned a couple, and you've told us how you would suggest or recommend that young people get involved with this, or anybody get involved with this. I keep saying young people, but there's probably room for a lot of us there. Is there anything else you would like to say about the fulfillment you get from holding office, and for those that have listened to this and may still be a little tentative about doing that?
Yeah, I tell you, holding office, as we spoke earlier, being able to give back, being able to help constituents, but meaningful legislation like Senate Bill 447, being able to get that implemented. Of course, getting the governor to sign it, is our last step. But being able to help an industry that I'm a part of, that I understand there was an issue there and has been for many years. It's I can't describe, the fulfillment and accomplishment it feels to be able to give back to our industry, and that's kind of in tow where I'll kind of reel in, our young folks or folks that are thinking about running for office. Don't worry about the industry that you're in. Like I said, just lead with it. And as I've done, but step up. We need to build the bench. We need more folks that understand our industry because there are not many. I mean, it's taken me several years being in the Senate caucus. There's 33 Republicans, and there's a few that understand the industry. Or I've got one guy that he's a Pebble Tech contractor, so he does pools, so he gets construction, but as far as our permitting issues or, what we're dealing with moratoriums or zonings, he doesn't understand that. So when legislation comes up and you've got GMA and ACCG, which those are two lobbying groups that represent cities and counties, and they come in and enforce saying, oh, all the cities and counties don't want this. People that don't understand that I'm fighting that headwind when they don't understand our industry. So encouraging more folks that are in our industry, that understand our industry, we need them to step up. We need them at the local level. We also need them at the state level as well.
That's good. The acronyms that you just mentioned, GMA is the uh, Georgia Municipal Association, I think,
That's correct.
and ACCG is the Association of City and County Governments. And what's cool about them is their members are all the cities and counties in Georgia that we pay taxes to. And then they come to the Capitol and they lobby against me. So
That's right.
it's great because it's effectively a union that hates me that I get to support financially, and but I love those guys, love them. So
Oh, they love me being chairman of state and local government.
you know, I think that mostly the relationship there has been good. There's a we all need to be respectful of each other, and we had a good experience with those folks up there this past session. I don't know if they'd say the same, but we do. So, Senator Dixon, I want to thank you for joining us on Build Baby Build. I had an opportunity to you gained my respect when we met initially, and then when I got to see you in action, your tenacity and perseverance, and all that you did, including Senate Bill 447, really confirmed that we're so fortunate that you hold that seat and you're working on behalf of Georgians.
Well, Jay, thank you so much. It's an honor to come on your show and be with you today. I treasure our friendship that we've developed over the past year. I look forward to working with you in the future. We've got many more things we need to work on together, and look forward to seeing you soon, my friend.
Thank you so much.